What would you do if the HOA called 911 on your private lake party and the cops arrived for you? I just wanted to host a lakefront party, but when the HOA called 911 and a full tactical response showed up at my gate, I knew this wasn't about a party anymore. They didn't know I owned the lake. They didn't know who was sitting at that party. And they had no idea the truth was about to drag our entire neighborhood into a fight with no turning back. The afternoon sun shimmered over Silver Pass Lake like melted glass, each ripple catching the light and throwing it back in diamonds. Music drifted lazily across the water. Soft, summery, nothing close to loud enough to bother anyone with a pulse. Guests lounged in pool chairs, laughing, sipping cold drinks, dipping their toes into the cerulean water. Kayaks bumped gently against the dock, and colorful paddle boats glided across the lake in slow arcs. It was the kind of peaceful lakeside celebration people moved to the mountains for. And then the peace cracked. The wooden deck trembled under the force of heels striking planks, sharp and furious. A streak of bright pink, loud, outdated, and unmistakably hostile, cut across the sun-drenched deck. HOA President Bethany Reed, her face flushed brighter than her resort blouse, stormed straight through clusters of startled party guests, waving her clipboard like it was a sheriff's badge. "This party is illegal!" she screeched, jabbing a finger toward the pool, as if she were condemning a crime scene. "Shut it down, Remy! I will call 911!" Her voice split the warm mountain air like glass shattering. A hush fell. Even the children splashing in the pool stopped moving, staring wide-eyed at the furious woman in pink. Guests exchanged uneasy glances. A couple stood up from their lounge chairs. One man quietly lowered the speaker volume, though it was already well within any reasonable limit. Bethany continued her tirade, pacing like an unstable metronome. "This gathering violates community codes, lakefront restrictions, noise ordinances. Don't pretend you don't know." Her hair, perfectly shellacked into place that morning, now quivered with indignation. And there, right in the middle of the uproar, lay Remy Cole, the supposed villain of her imagination. He was stretched out on a reclining pool chair, sunglasses reflecting the lake's sparkling surface, hands behind his head in total relaxation. When Bethany pointed at him, as if invoking judgment from the heavens, he didn't flinch, didn't argue, didn't even sit up. He just laughed. A full, unbothered, entertained laugh that rolled across the deck like it had no business being this confident. It infuriated her. "You think this is a joke?" she barked. Remy lifted his shades just enough to look at her directly. His smile didn't fade. "Bethany," he said calmly, "it's a beautiful day. Try enjoying it." She sputtered, outraged by his serenity, and stabbed at her phone screen. "Fine. You've left me no choice. I'm calling the authorities right now." Minutes later, the distant growl of engines echoed through the trees. The deck fell silent as two police SUVs rolled to a stop near the lakefront gate, crunching gravel under their tires. Doors opened. Uniforms stepped out. And finally, Captain Marcus Hale emerged. Tall, composed, impeccably dressed in his formal uniform, he walked onto the deck with a presence that shifted the air. His jaw was locked tight, eyes scanning the party with trained precision. Two officers flanked him, hands on their belts, alert and ready. Sunlight flashed against Hale's badge as he lifted one arm in a commanding gesture. "Everyone stay where you are," he ordered. "No one leaves this deck." It was a cinematic moment, caught between leisure and authority, sunlit water and the gravity of real consequence. Some guests backed away instinctively. Others froze mid-step. A woman dropped a plate of fruit. It clattered against the wooden planks. Bethany stepped forward triumphantly, chin raised like a queen presenting evidence. "Captain Hale, thank goodness you're here," she said dramatically. "This entire gathering is a violation. Unauthorized lake use, excessive noise, dangerously overcrowded. I've documented everything. She held out her clipboard as though expecting him to worship it. Captain Hale didn't take it. His gaze drifted past her, straight to Remy, still lounging in that same chair, still wearing that same maddeningly calm smile. "Sir," Hale said, voice firm, "are you the organizer of this event?" Remy tilted his head. "That'd be me." Bethany jumped in again, breathless with indignation. "Arrest him! Shut this down! He refuses to comply with HOA mandates!" Remy didn't even bother responding to her. Instead, he looked at Captain Hale with a quiet, assured confidence. And again, he laughed. Not loudly, not mockingly, just knowingly. The kind of laugh that said he understood something crucial everyone else didn't. Guests exchanged confused stares. Even Hale seemed momentarily thrown. What man laughs while an HOA president has police surrounding his lake party? The wind rustled through the pines. The boats bobbed on small waves. The sun glinted off the water like nothing was wrong at all. Yet tension coiled in the air, sharp and electric. Bethany's face tightened. "What are you smiling about?" Remy lowered his sunglasses, revealing eyes that were calm, not reckless, not defiant, just certain. Certain in a way that made Bethany's confidence falter for the first time. "Bethany," he said gently, "you might want to pace yourself. Today's just getting started." Her mouth fell open, speechless, not a common state for her. Captain Hale narrowed his eyes, studying Remy, sensing the invisible weight beneath his words. Something here didn't add up. Something big. And Remy's relaxed demeanor only deepened the mystery. Why wasn't he scared? Why wasn't he arguing or defending himself? What did he know? What did he have? The lake shimmered behind him, peaceful as ever, waiting for the truth to surface. But that truth didn't begin today. It began weeks earlier, long before the pink storm named Bethany Reed barreled across the pool deck. Back then, Remy had arrived at Silver Pass Lake with nothing more threatening than a box of tools, a fresh notebook, and the quiet confidence of a man who knew water better than he knew most people. As a former hydrologic engineer, he'd spent years designing spillways, dam gates, and runoff systems across the state. When an old family friend offered him ownership of the long-neglected lake and the adjacent marina, Remy saw more than land. He saw a chance to rebuild his life. The lake was calm that first morning, fog drifting low over the water like a soft, waking breath. The gravel crunched under his boots as he walked the shoreline, reviewing maps and the original 1964 deed tucked neatly into a folder under his arm. He had plans for this place. Repairs, upgrades, maybe a lakeside cafe or kayak school. He saw potential everywhere he looked. What he didn't see, at least not yet, was the woman watching him from behind a row of manicured hedges, arms crossed, jaw tight, already judging. Bethany Reed introduced herself the next day. She arrived in a golf cart that looked custom-built for suburban warfare, clipboard strapped to the front like armor. Her smile was tight, brittle, the kind of smile that might shatter if touched by sincerity. "You must be the new tenant," she said, emphasizing the word like it had a bad smell. "Owner," Remy corrected gently. "Remy Cole. I just took over the lake and the marina." Her expression flickered, annoyance, disbelief, something darker, before settling back into faux neighborly charm. "Well, I'm Bethany Reed, HOA president. We maintain standards here. Very high standards." The conversation spiraled quickly from polite greeting to thinly veiled threats. She pointed at his private dock. Out of compliance. At his maintenance shed, not approved. At the kayaks resting by the waterline. Potential safety hazard. Remy stayed calm, reminding her each time that the lake and marina were private property, not governed by the HOA. She didn't like hearing that. Within days, He received his first violation notice, printed in bold red letters and taped dramatically to his gate. 2 days later, another. And another. Some were so absurd he had to laugh. Excessive ripples on community waterway, one warning claimed, as though Remy himself controlled the breeze. But he didn't laugh when she marched onto his dock one morning, clipboard raised, and said, "This structure will need to be removed. HOA bylaws prohibit personal docks without approval." He stepped past her, calm as the lake behind him. "Bethany, the dock is mine. The lake is mine. And none of this falls under your jurisdiction." She bristled like a cat confronted by a mirror. "We'll see about that." And she didn't mean it figuratively. She meant it, literally. Because Bethany saw something Remy didn't. Opportunity. Jake, the carpenter who lived 2 houses down, was the first to warn him. A weathered baseball cap permanently glued to his head and sawdust clinging to his clothes. Jake was the kind of neighbor who believed in minding his own business, except when someone was about to get blindsided. He caught Remy by the marina one evening, sun low, cicadas humming in the trees. "Gotta tell ya," Jake said, leaning on the railing. "Bethany's been sniffing around the board real aggressive since you showed up." Remy raised an eyebrow. "About what?" Jake lowered his voice. "I overheard her talking to 2 board members. She wants your lake, Remy. Says the HOA should have gotten it years back. Says you're in the way." That made Remy pause. "The HOA has nothing to do with this lake." "Exactly." Jake kicked at a loose pebble. "But she's got some developer friend drooling over lake access. Claims if she can neutralize the obstruction, her words, not mine, the HOA could negotiate some big money deal." A light breeze rustled the pine needles. Remy absorbed the words slowly, like distant thunder rolling over the lake. "So," Jake continued, "this party of yours? It ain't the problem. It's just the excuse she's been waiting for." For a moment, silence settled between them, broken only by the gentle lap of the lake against the wooden posts. Bethany wanted him gone, and she wasn't afraid to twist laws, misuse authority, or weaponize the HOA's power to make it happen. Remy stared across the water, the last of the sun reflecting gold on the ripples. "If she wants to start a war," he murmured, "she should have picked a different lake." Because Remy knew something Bethany didn't. He wasn't just a lake owner. He was a man who prepared. Every document, every deed, every boundary survey, every legal detail of water rights. Remy had it all, organized, verified, untouchable. The only question now was how far Bethany would go to challenge him. And by the look in her eyes earlier at the pool deck, wild, furious, cornered, Remy suspected she was only getting started. The escalation began subtly at first, like the faint shift of wind before a storm, a missing mailbox flag, a fresh scrape on the gate latch he knew he hadn't caused, the kind of small disturbances that made a man double-check his locks at night. But Bethany was not a woman of subtlety. Not for long. 3 days after the pool party, Remy stepped outside at dawn, coffee steaming in his hand, expecting the usual quiet morning. The lake lay stretched before him like a mirror of pale silver, perfectly smooth except for the occasional ripple of a trout rising to feed. The air smelled of pine and cool earth, peaceful, untouched. Until he reached the shoreline. A new fence, thin metal stakes hammered into the ground, ran across a portion of his waterfront, strung with bright orange tape that fluttered in the breeze like warning flags on a battlefield. A laminated sign hung crookedly from the center. HOA safety restriction. No access beyond this point. Remy blinked once, then again, hoping the morning fog was distorting his vision. But the fence was real. So was the audacity. He crouched to run a hand along the metal, feeling the cold bite against his fingertips. The posts were freshly driven, the ground still loose around their bases. Installed in the dead of night. Someone working fast and someone working intentionally. Behind him, gravel crunched softly, the light shuffle of someone hesitant to be involved. Jake stood there, hands on his hips, jaw tight beneath his scruffy beard. "Saw her doing it at around 11 last night," he muttered. "Thought about stopping her, but she had 2 of those HOA volunteers with her, the ones who pretend they're deputies just because they print badges on plastic." Remy exhaled slowly. "She fenced off my shoreline." Jake nodded, and she was proud of it. A wave lapped against the new barrier, the water sloshing around the obstruction like it, too, refused to accept it. The lake had existed long before the HOA, long before Bethany. It would outlast her, but the nuisance was here and now. Remy straightened, brushing dirt from his palms. She knows this isn't her land. She knows she can't do this. "Oh, she knows," Jake said darkly. "She just doesn't care." Later that afternoon, the harassment escalated again. Remy returned from a supply run to find Bethany photographing the side of his boat shed, holding her phone at dramatic angles as though documenting a crime scene. She didn't even stop when he walked toward her. "Violation of aesthetic guidelines," she said without looking up. "Your siding is painted an unapproved shade." "It's brown," Remy replied. "Brown," she repeated, offended. "But not our brown." He stared at her. "Bethany, this shed is not HOA governed. It's part of the marina, which isn't—" She snapped another photo, cutting him off. "We'll see what the board says." He almost laughed. Almost. But the edge in her voice wasn't the sound of someone enforcing rules. It was someone tightening a net. That evening, Sarah arrived, notepad under her arm, her expression tight with concern. The sun was setting behind her, casting long amber streaks over the lake. "I got your message," she said. "Tell me everything." He did. The fence. The bogus warnings. The accusations growing more ridiculous by the day. Sarah listened carefully, her eyes narrowing more with each detail. "This isn't random," she said finally. "This is targeted pressure. They're filing complaints with the county, too. I checked records before coming here. Bethany's wording is careful, almost rehearsed. She's building a narrative." "A narrative for what?" "For removing you, or invalidating your ownership, or forcing a sale." Sarah tapped her notepad. "She's using zoning loopholes, quietly. I've seen this pattern before. HOAs sometimes try to overwhelm private owners by burying them in enough red tape to make staying feel impossible." Remy looked at the lake, its surface now streaked with golden dusk. "She wants the lake." "She wants control," Sarah corrected. "The lake is just the prize." A breeze rustled through the pines, bringing with it the distant sound of laughter from another lakeside home. Families who had no idea an absurd war was brewing at their shoreline. The next escalation arrived before dawn the following day. Remy stepped outside, yawning, expecting silence. Instead, he found a neon orange HOA infraction notice slapped onto his front door. It accused him of causing excessive nighttime disruptions. At the bottom, stamped dramatically, was a threat of community-wide penalties if he refused to comply. "There was no noise last night," Remy muttered. Jake, walking by with his morning thermos, held up his phone. "Nope, but Bethany was out here at 2 in the morning, banging pots and pans, recording it, and claiming it was coming from your house." Remy stared, incredulous. "She staged a noise violation?" "Welcome to Lakeside Estates," Jake said grimly. Frustration simmered into something heavier, a sense of violation, of intrusion. The lake had always represented peace to Remy. He'd chosen this place for its stillness, its clarity, its promise of rebuilding. But that peace had cracks now, and Bethany was wedging herself into every one of them. As the sun rose, casting a soft pink glow over the water, Remy walked back toward the unauthorized fence. It looked more out of place than ever, a jagged scar across the serene beauty of the shoreline. The lake didn't accept it. Neither would he. He pulled out his phone. "It's time to document everything." Sarah answered on the second ring. "Remy?" "She's escalating. I'm done playing defense." A quiet pause, then, "Good, because I think I know what she's planning next." "What is it?" Sarah's voice dropped, steady but grim. "Something that crosses a line she can't come back from." A wave slapped against the barrier with surprising force, splashing his boots. Remy didn't flinch. Whatever was coming, he was ready for it. He just didn't expect it to come so fast. By early afternoon, the pool party was in full swing again. Guests lounged on pool chairs, kids laughed as they raced inflatable rings across the water, and the scent of grilled corn drifted on the summer air. The sky was a bright, confident blue, one of those rare days when the entire lake seemed to glow. The deck boards felt warm beneath Remy's feet as he walked the perimeter, chatting with neighbors who'd dropped by out of curiosity or quiet support. But beneath the light-hearted chatter was a thread of tension, thin, taut, and humming. Bethany hadn't shown her face since the night she erected the illegal fence, and in Remy's experience, her silence felt less like retreat and more like the coiling of a spring. When she arrived, it was almost cinematic. The deck shuddered as her golf cart screeched to a halt. The bright pink blouse returned, even gaudier in the sunlight, fluttering around her like battle colors. Her face was already red, not from heat, but from outrage she seemed to manufacture from thin air. "That's it!" she shouted, stomping across the deck. "This entire gathering ends now!" Conversations died mid-sentence. Guests froze with drinks halfway to their lips. Someone muted the music. All eyes turned. Remy let out a slow breath. He had expected her. He simply hadn't expected her to come in this hot. Bethany jabbed her finger toward the pool. Underage drinking, unauthorized watercraft, wildlife disruption, excessive noise in violation of Community Code 4.7b. You name it. You've broken it. Remy's voice stayed level. "Bethany, we've been over this. The lake isn't governed by the HOA, and there's no noise violation." "Oh, isn't there?" she snapped. "Because I have decided there is!" Her hand flew to her phone. This time, there was no hesitation, no dramatic buildup. Her thumb hit the screen so hard, the device beeped in protest. "Yes!" she barked the moment the dispatcher answered. "This is an emergency. There's an illegal party happening on community property, underage drinking, safety hazards, immediate danger to residents." Gasps rippled across the deck. Remy took a step forward. "Bethany, stop. You know that's false." But she had already turned away, pacing in circles as she piled on lie after lie, each accusation more absurd than the last. When she hung up, she lifted her chin defiantly. "They're on their way, and this time they'll shut you down for good." Remy exchanged a glance with Sarah, who had just arrived with her legal briefcase slung over her shoulder. Her eyebrows knit with concern. "This is exactly what I feared," she murmured. Minutes later, the distant growl of engines rose again, this time sharper, faster, more deliberate than before. 2 squad cars rolled through the lakeside gate, followed by a county truck. Gravel shot from beneath their tires as they came to a stop near the deck stairs. The air thickened with the smell of hot metal and dust. Uniforms spilled out, forming a line of authority that cut the cheerful party atmosphere in half. And then Captain Marcus Hale stepped forward again. His posture was rigid, his jaw set like stone. This time he wasn't calm. He was prepared for something serious. Bethany had escalated the situation, and the call she made clearly painted a horrific picture for the responding officers. "Everyone stand back," Hale commanded, raising one arm. "Nobody move until we assess the situation." Guests backed away with nervous murmurs. A few parents instinctively shielded their children. Even the lake itself seemed to quiet, as though anticipating the confrontation. Bethany practically skipped toward Hale, her voice dripping with triumph. "Thank goodness you're here, Captain. They've completely ignored HOA orders. The noise, the drinking, there's a boat out there right now without registration." She pointed toward a paddleboard like she'd discovered a cartel submarine. Captain Hale held up a hand, signaling her to stop talking. His eyes slid to Remy. "Mr. Cole, we need to review all legal permissions for this gathering, and we need them now." Remy nodded calmly. "Of course." Bethany looked taken aback. "Of course? That's it? That's all you have to say?" Remy didn't answer her. He reached into his canvas bag by the pool chair and pulled out a thick folder, neatly labeled, tabbed, and organized. He handed it to Hale. "All permits, all property documents, all lake rights. Everything's current, signed, and compliant." Hale opened the folder. His eyes scanned the pages. The shift in his expression was subtle at first, then unmistakable. His shoulders eased. His brow softened. The hard tension in his jaw loosened just enough to signal a change. Then came the twist. Behind Remy, a woman stepped out from the shade of a poolside umbrella. She wore a simple sundress, sunglasses, and carried herself with effortless authority. Two teenagers trailed behind her. Sarah's breath caught. "Oh my God." Bethany looked ready to combust. "Who is that?" Remy didn't need to answer. Captain Hale straightened immediately. "Ma'am," he said, his voice suddenly respectful, "I didn't realize you were present." The woman smiled politely. "We were just here to celebrate my nephew's graduation. Lovely lake you have here, Mr. Cole." Bethany's eyes bulged. "Why are you talking to her like she's someone important?" The woman lowered her sunglasses just enough for the sunlight to catch her eyes. "Because," Hale said quietly, "that's the governor's wife." Silence dropped over the deck like a curtain. Bethany's mouth opened, then closed. Her pink blouse suddenly looked far too bright, far too loud, far too small for the moment swallowing her whole. The governor's wife continued, her tone calm, but carrying the weight of someone accustomed to being heard. "Captain Hale, I can assure you, everything here is entirely lawful. We've enjoyed a peaceful and well-organized gathering." Hale nodded, closing Remy's folder. "Understood, ma'am." He turned to his officers. "Stand down." And just like that, the tension broke, like a wave collapsing into foam. But Bethany wasn't done, not even close. Her voice cracked with outrage. "This isn't over. You can't just override community rules because she says so." Hale looked at her calmly. "Bethany, you filed a false emergency report." Her face paled. Sarah stepped closer to Remy, whispering, "This is the beginning. She won't accept defeat. She's going to escalate again." Remy nodded, eyes still on Bethany, because he could see it. The panic behind her fury. The fear of losing control. The fear of something bigger unraveling. And whatever she did next would be worse. Remy nodded, eyes still on Bethany, because he could see it. The panic behind her fury. The fear of losing control. The fear of something bigger unraveling. And whatever she did next would be worse. For a moment, the deck felt suspended in time. The governor's wife stood calmly beneath the umbrella, her presence as steady as the mountains in the distance. Captain Hale was already stepping back toward his officers, lowering his radio, returning the party to the safety it had never truly lost. Guests murmured again, the tension easing like mist burning off under the sun. But Bethany remained frozen, chest heaving, eyes darting, fists trembling around her clipboard. The bright pink of her blouse seemed to pulse with the intensity of her rage. She looked less like an HOA president and more like someone watching a carefully laid plan collapse in real time. "This isn't fair," she shouted, but her voice cracked halfway through. You can't just overpower the HOA because of connections." The governor's wife simply raised an eyebrow. She didn't need to speak. Power carried differently when it came from calm assurance rather than frantic control. Bethany backed away a step, lips tightening, face reddening until it looked sunburned despite being shaded. She clutched her phone again, but this time she didn't dial. Not yet. She was calculating, reassembling her sense of superiority, finding a new narrative she could weaponize. She spun around sharply, addressing the remaining party guests, not to them, but at them. "You all saw it. He bribed them. The governor's people are protecting him. This is a cover-up." A collective gasp rippled through the crowd. Even the teens at the shallow end stopped splashing, stunned by the accusation's absurdity. Remy stood slowly, removing his sunglasses with a calmness that infuriated her further. "Bethany, stop. You're digging yourself into something you won't climb out of." Her laugh was brittle, a cracking shell. "You don't tell me what I can or can't do. I run this community." Captain Hale stepped closer, his voice level but firm. "Mrs. Reed, you need to lower your tone." "Don't you dare Mrs. Reed me," she snapped. "You were ready to act before she showed up." She pointed at the governor's wife with a wild swing of her arm. "You saw what happened. He's corrupt. He's dangerous. He's—" "Bethany," Hale said again, and this time his tone changed. "Enough!" Something in his voice, a limit, a boundary, made her falter, only for a heartbeat. Then she recovered, but not in a way anyone expected. She straightened, smoothed her blouse, forced her breathing calm. When she spoke again, her voice was low, icy, and more dangerous than her shouting had ever been. "You enjoy your little party, Remy Cole," she said. "But mark my words, this lake, this land, none of it will protect you for long." She spun on her heel and stormed toward the gate. Her golf cart roared to life before she even sat fully down, tires spitting gravel behind her as she tore back up the lakeside road. The sound of her engine faded into the trees, leaving behind a strange quiet. Not peace, just quiet, like a forest right before lightning strikes. The governor's wife approached Remy gently. "She's not stable," she said quietly. "And I suspect she's been waiting a long time for an excuse." Remy nodded. "Longer than any of us realized." As the party resumed, though more cautiously now, Sarah stepped to Remy's side. "She's not going to stop," she warned. "Humiliation like that? She'll escalate. People like her always escalate." "What do you think she'll do?" Remy asked. Sarah's eyes tracked the empty road where Bethany had disappeared moments earlier. "She'll try to regain power, shift the narrative, reach higher. This wasn't her losing, it was her recalibrating." And as if to prove her point, Jake hurried down the path from the tree line, phone in hand, face pale. "Remy," he said, breathless. "She's on her landline. Thought you should know she's pacing back and forth, yelling into the phone. Whole neighborhood can hear her." "She calling the police again?" Remy asked. Jake shook his head. "No. This time she's calling someone else. Someone she kept referring to as higher authority. She said she wants to make sure your party becomes a case file. That tonight will be the end of the coal problem." Sarah closed her eyes. "She's doubling down." The sun dipped lower, shadows lengthening across the deck. Even the lake seemed to darken slightly, its earlier sparkle now muted beneath the weight of something shifting beneath the surface. Guests began packing their things slowly, unsure if staying was safe or wise. A few neighbors whispered apologies to Remy, promising they supported him no matter what. The governor's wife gave Remy a warm, reassuring squeeze on the arm before gathering her children and heading to her lakeside cabin further up the road. But even her calm presence couldn't dissolve the sense that something larger had been set into motion. As the final cooler lid clicked shut and the last kayak glided into its rack, Remy stood alone on the deck, staring at the rippling water. Sarah stepped beside him. She's going to make a move, a big one. She can't stand the idea that someone doesn't fear her. "Oh, I fear her," Remy said quietly, "but not in the way she thinks." "What way then?" Remy's jaw tightened. "I fear what people like her do when they realize they've lost control." A gust of warm wind swept across the lake, ruffling the surface, carrying with it the faint scent of pine and something else, something metallic and tense, like the air before a storm. Sarah's phone buzzed. She glanced at the screen and frowned. "County records? Alert. Someone accessed your lake permit file just now." Remy stared at her. "Bethany?" Sarah nodded grimly. "And she didn't access it anonymously. She used her HOA credentials. Whatever she's planning, it's happening soon." Remy looked back at the shimmer of the water, the deck, the empty chairs. The party had ended. But the fight was just beginning. By the next morning, the lake felt strangely different. The usual dawn chorus of birds was softer, as if the forest itself sensed something shifting. A pale mist clung low over the water, blurring the docks and boats into ghost-like shapes. Even the air seemed heavier, thick with the smell of wet pine and distant rain. Remy stepped onto the deck with a cup of coffee warming his hands. The steam curled upward, dissolving into the cool morning. In any other moment, he would have found peace in the scene. The hush, the stillness, the gentle lapping of water against the marina pilings. But today, the silence felt unnatural, expectant, like the lake was holding its breath. His younger sister, Emily, emerged from the sliding door behind him, pulling a blanket around her shoulders. She had helped plan the party, decorating tables with wildflowers and arranging snacks with the care of someone who wanted everything perfect. "You didn't sleep," she murmured. Remy didn't deny it. "Did you?" She shook her head, then looked out at the water. "It feels strange today." He nodded. "It does." A pair of headlights glowed faintly through the mist near the road. For a moment, Remy tensed, but then a familiar truck shape rolled into view. Jake's old pickup rattled down the lane, coughing dust even on a damp morning. Jake climbed out, raising a hand in greeting, though his expression was unusually tight. "You seein' what I'm seein'?" he asked as he stepped onto the deck. Remy followed his gaze. Two county vehicles were slowly cruising the tree line, just barely visible between the branches. One paused, idling, before rolling on again. "Third time they've passed this morning," Jake said. "And they weren't doing that yesterday." Emily's eyes widened. "Do you think... is it about the party?" "No," Remy said quietly. "This is bigger." Sarah arrived minutes later, striding down the path with a leather folder tucked beneath her arm. Her hair was pulled back, her expression crisp and focused. "I checked county logs again," she said without preamble. "Bethany pulled more than just your lake permit. She accessed environmental complaints, noise ordinances, zoning enforcement protocols, all within 5 minutes, one after another." Jake let out a low whistle. "That's a shopping list." "It's a blueprint," Sarah corrected. "And she didn't hide it. She wanted her name attached." Emily hugged her blanket tighter. "Why would she want that?" "Because she thinks she's untouchable," Sarah replied. "Or because someone told her she was." The morning deepened, sunlight finally burning off patches of fog. The trees glittered faintly with droplets. But the vehicles circling the lake didn't stop. One slowed again, lingering long enough for Remy to catch a silhouette watching the marina. He stepped forward. "They're assessing." Sarah nodded. "And preparing. Whatever she told them, they think it's credible." Emily swallowed hard. "What if they come again?" Remy looked at his sister, offering the faintest smile. Then we do what we did yesterday. We stay calm. We show the truth. But even he didn't fully believe that was enough. Not against someone as desperate as Bethany. By late morning, the silence had taken on a new weight. Fewer neighbors walked their dogs. Boats stayed tied to docks. Even the breeze seemed muted, carrying a restless tension across the water. Inside the lake house, Remy paced the living room while Sarah reviewed documents at the kitchen island. Jake stood watch by the window, scanning the tree line like lookout on a frontier homestead. Emily drifted between rooms, unable to settle, the blanket still around her shoulders. At exactly 10:04 a.m., Jake stiffened. "Remy," he said quietly, "you might want to see this." 3 black vehicles turned onto the gravel road leading toward the marina. Not the sheriff's SUVs from the day before. These were larger, heavier, built for utility. Behind them followed 2 marked police cars and a K9 unit. Emily's breath hitched. "Oh no." Remy set down his coffee. The mug trembled against the table. "They're coming back." Jake's voice was low. "And they brought more muscle this time." Sarah snapped her folder shut, face going pale. Bethany must have filed something serious, something that triggered protocol. The vehicles approached, engines rumbling like a gathering storm. Birds scattered from the trees, startled by the noise. Gravel flew as the first car skidded to a halt by the marina gate. Then came the sound that made Emily flinch, the metallic clack of weapons being readied. Not drawn, not pointed, but prepared. "Everyone out of the house!" a voice boomed through a megaphone. "Come out with your hands visible!" Emily gasped, stepping back. "Remy, what do we do?" He took a slow breath, steadying himself. "We go outside. We follow instructions. We have nothing to hide." "Mr. Cole," the megaphone continued, echoing off the water. "We have a warrant to search these premises based on credible reports of drug distribution and possible corruption involving law enforcement." Emily's knees almost buckled. "Drug distribution? What?" Sarah placed a firm hand on her shoulder. "Stay close to us. Don't say anything unless asked." The 4 stepped onto the deck with hands raised. Officers spread out across the property like a tactical tide, boots thudding against wood and dirt. Canine dogs pulled at their leashes, barking toward the marina shed. Another officer carried evidence bags, already bracing for what they believed they would find. But Remy's voice remained steady. "Captain Hale, you know these accusations are false." Hale stepped forward, his face tight with conflict. "Mr. Cole, we have to investigate. The reports were detailed, multiple calls, specific claims." "From who?" Remy asked. Hale hesitated. "Anonymous." But Sarah already knew. "Anonymous," she repeated coldly. "Or coming from an HOA president with a personal agenda?" The captain looked away. Officers swarmed the house, searching cupboards, drawers, tool chests, and coolers. One opened the marina's bait fridge, expecting to find something illicit. Another scanned the dock pilings with a flashlight. Every so often, one would shake their head. Nothing. Nothing. Still nothing. Minutes felt like hours. Emily trembled silently beside Remy, eyes watering as officers sifted through her backpack and graduation decorations. He whispered, "It's okay. They'll see the truth." But at that moment, even the stillness of the lake felt like it was waiting, watching, holding tension in every ripple. Sarah stepped closer to Remy, lowering her voice. "This is what we feared. She's not just crossing lines, she's burning them behind her. She wants maximum damage." "And she's going to get it," Remy murmured, not as a threat, but as a promise rooted in truth and preparation. Because storms don't last forever. But when they pass, they reveal everything. The storm broke fully 10 minutes later. The officers fanned out like a practiced wave, sweeping the property with rigid precision. Boots thundered up the steps, across the deck, and through the lake house. Task lights flicked on, slicing through corners and shadows. Radios crackled in clipped exchanges, punctuating the heavy air with bursts of static. Kitchen clear. Marina office clear. No contraband in the bait freezer. Every call echoed across the lake like hollow declarations, but the searching didn't stop. If anything, the frustration in their voices made them sharper, more determined. Someone, somewhere, had painted a picture ugly enough to warrant a high-level operation, and they were expecting to find something. One officer kneeled beside a cooler by the deck, snapping open the latches with a loud metallic pop. Melted ice sloshed. Bottled water and cans of lemonade bobbed inside. He looked up at Hale. Nothing. Another officer pried open the storage hatch on Remy's pontoon boat. The hinge groaned. Inside, folded life jackets, a coiled rope, and a small toolkit, nothing remotely suspicious. The K9 unit sniffed aggressively around the marina shed, claws scraping wood, dogs whining for a scent that didn't exist. Their handlers exchanged quick, confused glances. Captain Hale's jaw tightened. This wasn't going the way he had been led to expect. Sarah stood to one side with Emily, keeping herself calm for the girl's sake, even as her fingers pressed anxiously into the leather of her folder. Jake lingered near the railing, fists clenched, face reddening with anger every time an officer rifled through drawers or overturned a storage bin. Remy remained the calmest of all. Not because the situation wasn't terrifying. It was. Any innocent man surrounded by badges and accusations would feel the weight of it crush his ribs. But Remy's strength came from preparation, truth, documentation, a lifetime of working in high-pressure environments where panic only sharpened the blade aimed at you. Still, even knowing that, the sight of Emily crying quietly beside Sarah twisted something deep inside him. Two officers emerged from the house with a box. Hale stepped forward. "Drug paraphernalia?" one officer asked. "No," the other said, lifting out a tangle of multicolored wires. "Christmas lights." A long breath of disbelief escaped from someone near the back. Maybe a neighbor watching from behind a fence. Maybe one of the officers realizing the absurdity. Hale exhaled through his nose. "Keep searching." And the raid continued. For almost 2 hours, the lake house and surrounding land were torn apart and put back together again. Officers opened cabinets, closets, tackle boxes, desk drawers. They sifted through receipts, inspected wiring, checked chemical labels on cleaning supplies. They tested lake water samples. They inspected every inch of the property accessible by foot. By late morning, the sun had burned away the fog, leaving the deck exposed beneath bright, unforgiving daylight. Dust floated in the air like disturbed pollen. The lake shimmered as if in quiet sympathy, its surface reflecting the chaos unfolding along its edge. Finally, Captain Hale called out, "Hold position!" The command rippled through the officers. Dogs quieted. Radios stilled. Even the wind seemed to pause. Hale approached Remy slowly, his expression pulled tight with something between resignation and irritation. "Mr. Cole," he said, "we haven't found anything." Remy nodded. "Because there's nothing to find." Hale studied him for a long moment. "The report we received was detailed, more detailed than the call yesterday. It mentioned specifics, locations on your property, supposed times, descriptions of containers, alleged behavior of your guests." "Detailed," Sarah repeated, stepping forward. "Or scripted?" Hale didn't respond, but the flicker in his eyes was answer enough. Remy took a steady breath. "Captain, who made the call?" "Anonymous," Hale said again. Jake muttered, "Yeah, anonymous like a woman in pink with a landline." Emily looked between them fearfully. Why would she do this? Why would someone make up something so awful? Sarah placed a comforting hand on the girl's shoulder. Because some people weaponize rules when they lose control of the people around them. But Hale wasn't done. There were multiple calls, he admitted. One last night, one early this morning, both from the same source, and one from a landline registered to your HOA office. Remy's stomach tightened. Not from shock. He already suspected it. But hearing it confirmed by the man leading the raid hit him with a deeper, colder weight. Bethany, Jake breathed. Hale didn't say the name, but he didn't need to. Sarah stepped forward, her voice low but sharp. Captain Hale, you've just confirmed that every accusation brought against my client came from the same party. Someone with a documented conflict of interest. Someone actively targeting a private landowner. Someone who has been warned multiple times to cease harassment. Hale rubbed the bridge of his nose. Ms. Dawson, we acted under protocol. The report was credible on its face. Because she made it credible, Sarah said. She used official language. She probably cited county code. She misrepresented her authority. She lured your department into an operation that had no basis in fact. Silence thickened around them. The kind of silence that follows realization. The kind that precedes consequence. An officer approached, handing something to Hale, a printout from a nearby utility substation. Hale scanned it, then frowned. Sir, the officer said quietly, the anonymous calls were traced. They originated from a landline belonging to, That's enough, Hale cut in. But he already knew the truth was out. Sarah folded her arms. Captain, I would like to request that the full call logs be preserved. They will be needed. For what? Emily whispered. Remy's voice was calm, steady as the lake behind him. For proving that Bethany Reed orchestrated a fraudulent raid. Jake let out a breath through clenched teeth. She's done it now. But Remy wasn't angry. Not yet. He simply felt the shift, the storm beginning to break. Because once falsehood attempts to destroy truth, it leaves behind footprints, evidence, a trail even the most stubborn HOA president cannot hide. And Remy intended to follow that trail to its end. By late afternoon, the tactical vehicles were gone. The officers were gone. Even the K9 units had retreated, their barking replaced by the soft drone of cicadas waking in the treetops. But the damage they left, scattered boxes, rummaged drawers, overturned containers, remained like the aftermath of a flood. Emily sat on the porch steps, knees pulled to her chest, staring blankly at the lake. Her graduation decorations lay in a heap beside her, crushed under a boot during the search. The vibrant blues and yellows that once made her smile now looked muted, washed out. Jake and Sarah helped Remy restore what they could. They righted chairs, repacked coolers, swept the deck where gravel had been dragged across the wood. The whole house feels violated, Emily whispered, like they tore through our lives, not just our things. Remy knelt beside her, resting a reassuring hand on her shoulder. They were doing what they believed they had to do, Em. They acted on lies, lies meant to hurt us. But lies don't hold forever. Emily tried to smile, but her eyes were rimmed red. Sarah joined them, her voice soft. This won't happen again. Not like this. Not with what we're about to uncover. The living room gradually became a command center, its warm wooden walls now holding the weight of strategy instead of conversation. A laptop glowed from the coffee table, surrounded by stacks of documents, binders, and notepads. Jake had set up a small lamp to illuminate the papers spread across the entire rug. We need to track the calls, Sarah said, clicking through county access logs. Every report, every timestamp. If we can tie them all to Bethany's landline, then she's done. Jake leaned over her shoulder. She used her HOA login earlier. You sure she's dumb enough to make calls from her home phone? Not dumb, Sarah corrected. Arrogant. Big difference. Thunder rumbled softly in the distance. Not a storm yet, just a warning that one might form. Wind brushed across the lake, tugging loose strands of Emily's hair and rippling the water in soft waves. Remy stepped away to check the marina shed, wanting a moment of clarity. The smell of oil, cedar boats, and sun-warmed planks felt grounding. He ran a hand along the railing, smooth wood worn by years of lake wind, and let the familiar textures remind him of simpler days. But simplicity wasn't coming back, not until the truth surfaced. As he returned to the house, he noticed movement on the narrow footpath by the pines. A couple approached, neighbors he recognized only by sight. They looked uneasy, hesitant, almost guilty. "Mr. Cole?" the man asked. Remy nodded. "Evening." "We, heard what happened today," the woman said, wringing her hands. "We're so sorry. We never believed any of those rumors Bethany spread about you." Remy frowned. "Rumors?" She nodded again. "She told some of us that you were planning to turn the marina into a nightclub, that you were letting strangers live in boats, that you were draining the lake for a private project." Jake muttered, "She really doesn't know when to quit." But the woman stepped forward, surprising them all. "I brought something," she said. "Something I think you should see." She handed Remy a small stack of printed emails, HOA communication threads, each showing timestamps, board member responses, and, most tellingly, Bethany's fabrications typed in crisp, confident language. Accusations about supposed violations from families who had done nothing wrong. Threats disguised as procedural notices. References to problematic owners. Remy flipped through them slowly, a cold certainty forming in his chest. "She's been spinning narratives about you for months," the woman finished. "About others, too. Anyone who questioned her." The man nodded. "People are scared of her. But after today, we're done staying silent." More footsteps sounded along the gravel path. Then more. Within minutes, the living room filled with neighbors, 15 families in total, each carrying papers, screenshots, video recordings, or simple stories of intimidation. The Johnsons brought photos of fines taped to their home at midnight. The Rivers family revealed letters demanding they stop kayaking at sunrise. The Marshalls showed a notice accusing them of running an illegal business because they hosted a book club. Every voice added a new layer of truth, forming a pattern bigger than any one family could have proven alone. "This is a campaign," Sarah said, her voice quiet but razor-sharp. "A targeted harassment pattern. She wanted control of the lake, and she used the HOA to eliminate anyone who stood in her way." Remy gathered the papers into a single stack, feeling the weight, literal and symbolic, settle into his hands. "An emergency HOA meeting," Jake said. "Call one. Make her face all of this." Sarah nodded. "Yes. And with what we have now, she won't talk her way out of it." Emily finally stood, wiping her eyes. "People need to hear the truth." Remy looked around the room, at neighbors who once barely waved now standing shoulder to shoulder, at Sarah, fierce and determined, at Jake, ready to drag the entire HOA into the spotlight, at Emily, who had lost her sense of safety but not her courage. "This isn't just about me anymore," Remy said. "This is about everyone she hurt." He took a breath, steady and strong. "Tomorrow morning, we call the meeting." The room hummed with agreement. The lake house, moments ago a symbol of intrusion, became a symbol of unity. Outside, the wind shifted direction, stirring the lake into small ripples that caught the moonlight like scattered silver. A rising tide, a changing wind, a community waking up. And somewhere across the lake, behind the dark windows of her house, Bethany had no idea that the people she once controlled were gathering strength. By the time the sun dipped low the next day, casting long gold beams over Silver Pass Lake, nearly every resident had heard about the emergency HOA meeting. Word spread not through official channels. Bethany would never have allowed that. But through porch whispers, driveway nods, and quiet knocks on neighbors' doors. One by one, families who had endured years of intimidation stepped forward, ready to reclaim their dignity. Remy arrived early at the Lakeside Community Center, the same wooden structure that overlooked the water and hosted 4th of July picnics. Tonight, however, the building's familiar charm felt sharpened, electrified by tension. Lanterns along the deck flickered to life as dusk settled over the lake, their pale glow reflecting off the water like trembling stars. Chairs had been arranged in rows facing a long table where the HOA board usually sat. But tonight, residents filled the seats long before the board arrived, murmuring in agitated clusters, clutching papers, screenshots, and memories they had kept quiet too long. Jake stood near the railing, arms crossed, eyes scanning the gathering with a quiet intensity. Sarah organized a stack of documents on the front table, her movements crisp and deliberate. Emily lingered behind them, nervous but resolute, her presence a reminder of the personal cost of the chaos Bethany had unleashed. When Bethany finally arrived, she came in like a gust of fury, heels clicking, clipboard pressed to her chest, hair sculpted in a defiant swirl. But for the first time, her entrance did not command obedience. Heads didn't bow, conversations didn't stop. People simply watched her walk into the room she no longer controlled. She slowed when she realized it. "Everyone, please take your seats," she said sharply. "This meeting has been called under false pretenses. I assure you, the board will address this nonsense quickly." But no one sat. It was Remy who spoke first. "We'll begin when all residents are present." Bethany whipped around. "I am the HOA president, Mr. Cole. I decide when we begin." Sarah stepped forward. "Actually, by procedural code, an emergency meeting called by a majority of homeowners overrides the president's schedule." Whispers rose. Bethany's fingers tightened around her clipboard. The last of the families filed in. The sun had fully set now, leaving only lantern light and the shimmering reflection of the lake beyond the deck. Bethany cleared her throat. "Fine. If this circus must proceed, let's hear whatever fabricated complaints you believe you have." But Remy didn't start with complaints. He started with facts. He stepped to the front, placed a folder on the table, and looked directly at the crowd. "I'm going to show you exactly what Bethany has been doing, not just to me, but to all of you." He lifted the first document, a boundary map highlighting the private lake deed. "This lake is not HOA property. It never has been." Bethany scoffed loudly, but Sarah continued, projecting scanned copies onto a portable screen Jake had set up. Minutes later, murmurs rippled through the room. Astonishment, anger, recognition. Then the next revelation. False citations issued to multiple households, backdated letters, unauthorized safety inspections, where nothing was ever unsafe. Each document displayed with time-stamped clarity. Bethany shook her head aggressively. These are misunderstandings. Routine processes." "Routine?" Mrs. Johnson stood, voice trembling with controlled rage. "You told me sunrise kayaking was endangering wildlife. My husband hasn't kayaked since." Another neighbor rose. "You said our book club violated business operation codes." Another. "You fined my family $300 for excessive laughter." Gasps and low outrage filled the air. Remy didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. The truth was louder than anything Bethany could shout. He clicked to the next slide. Audio recordings. Bethany's face drained of color. Static buzzed for a moment. Then her voice filled the meeting, stiff, disguised, dripping with false urgency. There's underage drinking on the property, possible drug activity, suspicious behavior by the homeowner. The room exploded with disbelief. Several gasped. Some cursed under their breaths. Even her own vice president, Robert, stepped away from her, shaking his head as though seeing her for the first time. The recording ended with her unmistakable voice, unmasked. That should do it. No one survives 2 police raids. The crowd erupted. Bethany lunged forward. That is doctored audio. You can't. Enough, Sarah said, her voice cutting through the room like a blade. There's more. She displayed the secret LLC filing. Bethany's name attached to an entity created with the explicit purpose of acquiring lakefront property. Acquiring Remy's lakefront property. The room fell silent, not with calm, but with the heavy gravity of betrayal. Bethany stumbled back a step. This is all coincidence. You are twisting my efforts to improve this community. That improvement included trying to buy my house? Mr. Johnson asked sharply. And trying to force out every family before us? Another demanded. It included orchestrating a raid on an innocent man, Sarah added quietly, and leveraging your title to seize private property. Bethany opened her mouth, but no sound came out. Just a soft, desperate wheeze. And then, as if the moment had been waiting for him, a figure stepped from the doorway. An elderly man in a worn jacket. Steady posture, familiar face. Remy felt his breath catch. Not in fear, but recognition. Mr. Harrison, the quiet man who always walked the shoreline. The man who'd watched everything with an observant patience. He stepped to the center, removing his hat with dignified calm. For those who don't know me, he said, voice deep and unwavering. My name is James Harrison. I own the land parcels surrounding the lake. He paused. And I am also the governor's brother. Silence slammed across the room. Bethany swayed slightly, gripping her clipboard like a lifeline. Harrison continued, pulling a folded packet from his coat. I've reviewed every complaint filed against Mr. Cole. I've investigated the police calls, and I've seen the development proposal Mrs. Reed sent to a private firm, attempting to sell land she never had rights to. He turned to Bethany. You attempted fraud. You manipulated a governing body, and worst of all, you terrorized this community. The crowd's anger, once scattered, now crystallized into something unified and powerful. Bethany staggered backward. No, this is wrong. This is all... But her voice cracked, fracturing into silence. The truth had found her. The lanterns along the lake deck flickered as a cool breeze swept in from the water, rustling papers on the table where the evidence lay. The shimmering surface behind Mr. Harrison felt like a vast mirror, reflecting a community finally waking from a long-held fear. No one spoke. No one moved. Every eye remained locked on Bethany Reed, the woman who had ruled with intimidation for over a decade, and who now stood trembling, her pink blouse clinging to her like a deflated flag. Mr. Harrison closed the folder in his hands, the snap echoing through the still air like the closing of a courtroom case. Mrs. Reed, he said, what you attempted wasn't just unethical. It was illegal and dangerous. You put innocent people at risk, including children. Bethany's face blanched. Her lips parted, but no defense came. Only shallow breaths and the faint rustle of her clipboard slipping from her grasp, falling to the wooden floor with a soft, defeated clatter. Sarah stepped beside Harrison. The evidence has already been shared with the district attorney's office, she said. They've requested statements from every homeowner here, and from Captain Hale. As if summoned by name, Hale stepped into view from the rear of the gathering, his presence steady, austere. He had been silent through most of the meeting, listening, observing. Now he approached slowly, boots thudding on the deck. Mrs. Reed, he said, his voice level. You filed multiple false police reports. You misrepresented community authority. You attempted to manipulate law enforcement to serve a personal agenda. These are serious infractions. Bethany's knees buckled slightly. Robert, her vice president, stepped away from her entirely, distancing himself both physically and morally. "No, please, Captain, you don't understand," she whispered. I was trying to protect the community." "From what?" Remy asked quietly. "From kayaks? From book clubs? From the truth?" A ripple of uneasy laughter moved through the crowd, not mocking, but relieved. The tension was shifting, changing, dissipating. Bethany's eyes darted wildly from face to face, searching for an ally, for someone, anyone, to validate her shrinking authority, but every face reflected the same truth. She had gone too far, for too long. And someone in the back finally said it. "You don't protect the community," Mrs. Johnson declared. "You terrorized it." Bethany flinched as though struck. Before she could respond, the crowd parted as two figures approached. District Attorney field deputies, their jackets marked clearly but without aggression. They carried clipboards, not weapons. Law, not force. One addressed her calmly. "Mrs. Reed, based on the evidence submitted and the statements provided, you are under investigation for filing false reports, harassment, attempted fraud, and interference with private property rights. At this time, we are placing you under temporary detainment pending formal review." Bethany gasped. "Detainment? You can't arrest me. I am the HOA. "No," Remy said softly. "You were." The deputies guided her forward, gentle but firm. Her wrists were not cuffed, but there was no mistaking the finality of her removal. As she passed the crowd, she murmured frantic pleas, but no one reached out. No one defended her. The woman who had spent years making others feel small had finally become small herself. The deputies escorted her toward the entrance, where a county SUV waited with its lights off. No spectacle, no sirens, just accountability. When the door shut behind her, silence fell again. A different silence this time, a peaceful one, a grateful one. Mr. Harrison stepped onto the makeshift stage, a simple outdoor table, and took a long breath before addressing the community. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, "what happened here was not just a matter of one homeowner being targeted. It was a community being taken advantage of. But you stood together. You told the truth. And now, things will change." He paused, letting the moment settle. "I will personally oversee a restructuring of this HOA," he continued. "Effective immediately, the board is dissolved. A new election will be held next month. And the lake, Silver Pass Lake, will remain open to all residents for recreational use, free from HOA oversight." A wave of relief swept over the crowd. Some families hugged. Others let out long-held sighs. A few even teared up. Emily wrapped her arms around Remy, whispering, "It's finally over." Remy smiled as he hugged her back. "Yeah, it's over." Jake clapped him on the shoulder. "You did good, man. Damn good." Sarah approached, offering a tired smile. "You stood your ground. You didn't let fear or anger drive you. That matters." Mr. Harrison joined them, handing Remy a simple business card. "I meant what I said," he told him. "I'm developing a new eco-friendly marina resort across the lake. I could use a hydrologic engineer with integrity, if you're interested." Remy stared at the card, then at the lake shimmering behind them. The same water Bethany tried to claim, the same water whose deed he had guarded, the same water that had seen raids, lies, abuse of power, and yet remained beautiful. "I'm interested," Remy said. Harrison smiled. "Good. And one more thing. Your rent just went down 50%. Consider it apology for this mess. As the crowd dispersed into the cool night air, lanterns flickered softly against the darkening lake. Children skipped stones into the shallows. Neighbors who hadn't spoken in years began laughing together again. A sense of community, real community, blossomed. Remy walked down to the water's edge where the faint ripple of the breeze brushed against his legs. The lake, once a battleground, now reflected peace. Tomorrow, he would begin rebuilding. Not just his trust in the system, but the community's trust in itself. And he would host another pool party soon. This time, without fear, without interruption, and without a pink-clad tyrant waiting to sabotage it. He dipped his fingers into the cool water. Justice, he murmured, watching the ripples spread outward, always finds its level. Tonight, it finally had. If you've ever stood your ground against someone who thought rules made them royalty, drop a justice in the comments. Stories like this remind us that truth doesn't shout. It just outlasts the noise. And if you enjoy these real-world battles for dignity and the right to your own land, stick around and hit subscribe. More lake, ranch, and HOA justice stories are on the way.